God is in control. Trust His timing and watch miracles unfold. Have you ever found yourself waiting for something, whether it's a job, a relationship, healing, or a breakthrough? You've prayed, you've hoped, and you've worked hard, yet it feels like things are moving slower than you expected, or maybe not moving at all. It's in these moments of waiting, when the clock seems to tick endlessly, that it's easy to doubt and ask, why is this taking so long? What is God doing? But here's the truth. God's timing is never late. His plan for your life is unfolding exactly as it should, and when you learn to trust His timing, you will see miracles in places you never imagined. I know that waiting can feel like the hardest part of our journey, but I want to encourage you today. Trusting God with your timing and letting go of the anxiety around your situation opens the door for His perfect plan to unfold in a way that will truly surprise you. We often want things to happen on our timeline, driven by our urgency and impatience. We live in a world where everything is instant, where we're used to having things done quickly, and it's easy to apply that same mindset to our spiritual lives. We want God to act now, and we forget that He has a much bigger picture in mind. God knows exactly what you need, when you need it. He knows the right time for everything, and His plan is always perfect. When we trust Him with our timing, we begin to see that the waiting isn't wasted. It's part of the process. This is why learning to trust in God's timing is so essential. When we let go of our need to control every detail and simply rest in His perfect plan, miracles begin to unfold. The peace that comes from trusting that God is in control allows us to move through life's challenges with confidence. No longer do we need to fret over whether or not our dreams will come true. Instead, we can walk forward with the assurance that God's plan will happen in His time, and His timing is always better than ours. You may be wondering how this applies to your life right now. Maybe you're in a season of waiting. You've been praying for something for a long time, and it feels like nothing is happening. But I want to tell you this: God is not ignoring your prayers. He's preparing you for something greater than you can see at this moment. Trust His timing. He is in control, and in His perfect time, He will bring you to exactly where you need to be. Your story is still being written, and the best chapters are ahead. When you surrender your need for immediate answers and rest in His timing, you will be amazed at the miracles He will bring into your life. So today, let's talk about the importance of trusting God's timing, the peace that comes from surrendering our worries, and the miraculous things that happen when we step back and let God lead. Because when you trust God's timing, you will see that it's never too late for a miracle to unfold in your life. Chapter 1. The nature of God's control. When we talk about God's control, we're talking about something so much bigger than our ability to understand or see in the natural world. God is sovereign over everything, over the universe, over nature, and most importantly, over our lives. The beautiful thing about God's control is that it's not a distant, authoritarian control. It's a loving, intentional guidance that extends into every detail of our lives, even when we can't see how everything fits together. God doesn't just control the big events in our lives. He orchestrates every moment. Psalm 115:3 says, "Our God is in heaven. He does whatever pleases Him." This verse isn't just telling us that God has power. It's telling us that His power is always in accordance with His will, which is always good. Everything that happens is part of God's plan, and He is actively involved in every detail of our lives, from the smallest moment to the grandest. When we say that God is in control, we mean that He is at the center of every situation, working behind the scenes in ways we can't always see or understand. This kind of control is deeply comforting when we remember that God is not like us. He's not just managing things from a distance. He is intricately involved in our lives, loving us with an unfailing love. When we allow God to be in control, we're not giving up our autonomy or surrendering to a harsh ruler. We're choosing to trust a loving Father who knows what's best for us. God's control is not about restricting our freedom. It's about guiding us to what is best for us, even when we don't fully understand the journey. We might not always see or understand the bigger picture. We can't always know why things happen the way they do, and that's where trust comes in. Trusting in God's control means believing that even when things are unclear, He's still in control and working things out for our good. Romans 8:28 reminds us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." This verse is a promise that no matter what we go through, God is at work, bringing good from every situation. When we acknowledge the nature of God's control, we are inviting peace into our hearts. God has not left us to navigate life on our own. He's not far off, watching from a distance. He is close, guiding us, providing for us, and working out His plan for us, no matter what obstacles may come our way. God's control is perfect because His understanding is perfect. While we may struggle to understand why things happen the way they do, God sees the full picture. Trusting in God's control means acknowledging that He knows what He's doing, even when we don't. Chapter 2. The Struggles of Waiting on God's Timing. Let's be honest. Waiting is hard. It's uncomfortable, frustrating, and at times, it can feel like time is standing still. Waiting on God's timing can feel like you're stuck in a season with no clear end in sight. You've prayed for something, you've hoped for something, and yet it feels like nothing is happening. The promise feels distant, and the answer seems out of reach. But in the midst of that waiting, God is doing something in us, even when we don't see it or feel it. One of the biggest struggles we face during these waiting periods is the temptation to take matters into our own hands. It's so easy to get impatient, to think that maybe God is too slow, or perhaps we missed something. We want to make things happen on our own, and we begin to rush the process. But God's timing is never delayed. It's perfect. It's just that our timing is often far different from His. We want things to happen now, but God often uses the waiting to shape us, refine us, and prepare us for what's ahead. In the Bible, we see countless examples of people who had to wait for God's promises to be fulfilled. Abraham waited for years before receiving the promised son, Isaac. Joseph was sold into slavery and spent years in prison before God elevated him to a position of power. David was anointed as king, but it took many years before he actually became the king. These waiting periods weren't a punishment, nor were they a sign that God had forgotten about them. They were seasons of preparation. Seasons where God was doing a deeper work in their hearts and lives. These waiting periods allowed them to grow in faith, character, and dependence on God. The struggle of waiting is real, and it often brings up doubts and fears. We might wonder, is God really in control? Is He really working for my good? But in those moments, God is inviting us to grow deeper in our trust in Him. Waiting isn't wasted time. It's an opportunity to draw nearer to God, to develop patience, and to understand more about His heart for us. It's in the waiting that we are reminded that God's plan is far greater than our own, and His timing is always worth the wait. There are seasons in our lives when we don't understand why things aren't happening the way we expect. It's easy to get discouraged, but waiting on God's timing is an act of faith. It's trusting that He knows what is best for us, even when we can't see the outcome yet. It's acknowledging that He is in control, and that His plan is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our timing. God is teaching us to trust Him more fully during these waiting periods. I know waiting is tough, but remember, you are not waiting in vain. God is working. He's using this time to prepare you for something greater than what you've imagined. Trust that His timing is not only perfect, but it's better than anything you could plan for yourself. So while the waiting may be hard, hold on to the promise that God is at work, and in His perfect time, you will see the fulfillment of His plan for your life. Keep your eyes on Him, and trust that the waiting will lead to something beautiful. Chapter 3. Trusting God's timing, a key to experiencing miracles. When it comes to trusting God's timing, we must remember that His timing is intimately connected to His nature. He is all-knowing, wise, and full of love. Trusting God's timing isn't just about waiting for things to happen. It's about believing in His perfect plan and understanding that everything He allows or does in our lives is ultimately for our good and His glory. When we place our trust in God's timing, we're not just submitting to the inevitable, but we're aligning ourselves with a higher purpose, a purpose that will bring about miracles. Miracles aren't always dramatic or earth-shattering events. Sometimes the most powerful miracles happen when we least expect them. During those quiet moments when we finally surrender and say, "God, I trust you." God's timing often aligns perfectly with His miracles, and there's beauty in the waiting. God doesn't rush His work, because what He is creating in us is eternal. When we choose to trust His timing, we position ourselves to experience the miracles He has for us, not because we have earned them, but because of His grace and His perfect timing. We see numerous examples in Scripture of people who experienced God's miraculous timing. Sarah, the wife of Abraham, waited for many years before the promised child, Isaac, was born to them, far beyond the time when it seemed possible for her to bear a child. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt after years of waiting and preparation, and God's intervention came at the right moment, opening the Red Sea and delivering them from Pharaoh's army. Jesus, too, performed miracles when the time was right, including raising Lazarus from the dead, even after he had been in the tomb for 4 days. These stories teach us that God's miracles are not random, but are perfectly timed according to His divine plan. When we trust His timing, we make room for Him to work in ways that surpass our understanding. God's miracles are not about instant gratification or quick fixes. They're about His perfect will unfolding in the right moment. When we learn to trust God with the timing of our lives, we give Him the space to show us His greatness, His provision, and His perfect love for us. Sometimes it's hard to wait for the miracle we've been praying for. We want to see the results now. We want to experience the breakthrough today, but God's timing is different from our own. Trusting God means accepting that He knows the perfect moment for everything in our lives. In those moments of waiting, we need to hold on to the truth that He is working, even when we don't see it yet. It's in that space of waiting, when we trust Him fully, that we can experience the greatest miracles, miracles of transformation, peace, and provision. When we trust God's timing, we trust that His plans are always bigger and better than we can imagine. Our part is not to hurry the process or try to manipulate the outcome, but to submit to His will and rest in the knowledge that He is in control. The miracle isn't just in the destination, but in the journey of trusting Him along the way. Chapter 4. How to trust God's timing when it doesn't make sense. Trusting God's timing is hard, especially when we can't see the bigger picture. There are seasons in life where waiting feels unbearable, where everything seems to be happening at once, or when things aren't unfolding the way we hoped or expected. It's in these moments when trusting God's timing becomes a real act of faith. We often feel that if we can't see the end result, we can't trust the process. But faith is not about having all the answers or seeing the outcome in advance. Faith is about trusting God when we can't see the way forward, trusting that He knows exactly what we need and when we need it. It's letting go of our desire to control every aspect of our lives and recognizing that God's plan is far better than anything we could orchestrate on our own. When things don't make sense, it's easy to question God's timing. You might wonder why God is taking so long to answer your prayers, or why things are happening in a way that seems difficult or unfair. But even in the moments of confusion and doubt, God is still working. Just because you can't see it yet doesn't mean God isn't moving behind the scenes. The Bible reminds us in Isaiah 55:8-9 that, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This passage shows us that our understanding is limited, but God's wisdom is infinite. His timing and plans are far beyond our comprehension, and that's why we can trust Him, even when things don't make sense. Trusting God's timing means that we stop trying to rush Him. It means that even when we feel the urgency, even when the waiting feels unbearable, we rest in the truth that God is doing something good in the waiting. We may not understand why things are happening when they are, but we can trust that God is using that time for our good, to prepare us for something greater, or to build our character. In those moments of doubt, it's important to remember that waiting on God is not passive. It's not about doing nothing or sitting idly by. Waiting on God is an active choice. It's choosing to trust, choosing to pray, choosing to keep moving forward in faith even when we don't see the results right away. It's in the waiting that we develop the patience and perseverance that God uses to refine us and make us more like Him. Sometimes it feels like God is taking longer than expected to answer our prayers. But trusting His timing means knowing that He is never late. He is always right on time, and when we choose to trust in Him, we open ourselves up to receiving His perfect provision. When things don't make sense, remind yourself that God sees the entire picture. He knows exactly what you need, when you need it, and He will provide at the right time. So, if you're in a season of waiting and you're struggling to trust in God's timing, remember, God is faithful. Even when you don't understand, even when it doesn't make sense, He is at work. Trust His timing, surrender your worries, and know that His plans are worth the wait. Chapter 5. The Power of Faith in Waiting. Faith is the backbone of trusting God's timing. Without faith, it's almost impossible to wait patiently for God's plan to unfold. Faith is not just about believing in God's existence, but it's about believing that He is good, that His promises are true, and that He is working on our behalf, even when we can't see it. The journey of waiting for God's timing often tests our faith in profound ways, but it's in these seasons that our faith grows stronger and deeper. The Bible tells us in Hebrews 11:1 that, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for, and assurance about what we do not see." This verse highlights the essence of faith, believing in something even though it's not immediately visible. When we trust God's timing, we are choosing to believe that He is working, even when we can't see the results in front of us. Faith bridges the gap between our current reality and the future promise. It helps us to hold on to hope in the waiting and trust that God will bring us through in His perfect timing. Faith in God's timing is not about being passive, sitting back and waiting for things to fall into place. It's about actively trusting God every step of the way. It's about taking action in obedience even when we don't fully understand why God is asking us to wait. Sometimes the most difficult part of trusting God's timing is that we can't see the plan He has for us. But true faith is trusting God even when we don't have all the answers. There's a profound peace that comes when we actively choose faith over fear. Instead of allowing doubt and worry to control us, we can choose to trust in the goodness of God's plan. Faith helps us to silence the voices of doubt and focus on the truth of God's Word. When we believe that God's timing is perfect, we can rest assured that He is working in our lives, even when things feel stagnant or uncertain. One of the greatest examples of faith in waiting is found in the story of Abraham. God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, but for many years, Abraham and Sarah were childless. Abraham had to trust God's timing even when it seemed impossible. Genesis 17:5 tells us that God changed Abraham's name to Abraham, meaning father of many nations, before he had any children. Abraham's faith was tested by the long years of waiting, but his trust in God's promise never wavered. Eventually, at the perfect time, God fulfilled His promise and gave Abraham and Sarah a son, Isaac. Abraham's story is a powerful reminder that God's timing may not always align with our expectations, but when we have faith in His plan, He will come through in ways that are beyond our comprehension. As you wait on God's timing, remember that faith is not about understanding the details or seeing the full picture. It's about trusting God with every moment, believing that He is in control and that His plans for your life are good. Trusting God's timing doesn't mean we stop moving forward. It means that we move forward with confidence, knowing that God is leading the way. Chapter 6. The Reward of Patience in God's Timing. Patience is one of the greatest virtues that God develops in us through waiting. Learning to be patient doesn't mean being passive or complacent. It means trusting in the process and having confidence that God's timing is always right. The reward of patience in God's timing is not only the fulfillment of His promises, but also the transformation that happens in our hearts as we wait. Patience refines us, teaching us to rely more fully on God and less on our own understanding. And why? James 5:7, we are encouraged to be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. This passage draws a beautiful analogy to the farmer who plants seeds and waits for the harvest. The farmer doesn't rush the process, but trusts that in time the crops will grow. In the same way, we are called to trust that God is working in the waiting, even when we don't see immediate results. Patience teaches us to wait for God's perfect timing, knowing that He is working on our behalf. The reward of patience is not just the fulfillment of our desires, it's the growth of character and trust. Romans 5:3-4 tells us, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. Waiting on God and trusting His timing develops perseverance. Perseverance helps us to endure trials and keep our focus on God's promises. Even when we face challenges along the way, it strengthens our character, helping us to become more like Christ. And ultimately, it leads us to a deeper hope in God, knowing that He is faithful and will fulfill His promises in His time. The reward of patience is also seen in the peace that comes from trusting God. When we let go of anxiety and stop trying to control everything, we experience a deep peace that surpasses understanding. This peace isn't dependent on our circumstances. It's rooted in our trust in God's control over our lives. When we patiently wait for God's timing, we allow His peace to fill our hearts, replacing our worries with assurance that He is in control. As we wait, God's timing teaches us to trust Him not just with our desires, but with our whole lives. Patience doesn't mean that we will never face difficulty or disappointment. It means that, even in the midst of uncertainty, we can rely on God's faithfulness. The reward of patience is knowing that God is always working behind the scenes, preparing us for the next step in His plan. And when we look back on the journey, we will see that waiting on God's timing was worth every moment, because it led us to exactly where we were meant to be. Chapter 7. Embracing the Journey. Living in God's Timing. Every day. One of the most profound aspects of trusting in God's timing is learning to embrace the journey, not just the destination. We often find ourselves fixated on the end goal, the promise that lies ahead, and we forget that the journey itself is part of God's purpose for our lives. It's in the moments of waiting, the periods of uncertainty, and the seasons of growth that we learn the most about who God is and who we are in Him. Living in God's timing means living in the present, fully trusting that where we are right now is part of His perfect plan. We may not have all the answers, and we may not see the full picture, but we can trust that God is working even in the seemingly small or difficult moments. Romans 8:28 assures us, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." Every season, every trial, every waiting period is part of God's divine purpose for our lives. And while we may want to rush through it, God uses these moments to shape our character, grow our faith, and teach us to depend on Him. The beauty of living in God's timing is that we don't have to have all the answers. We don't need to figure out how everything will work out, because we can rest in the knowledge that God has it under control. When we embrace the journey, we free ourselves from the anxiety of the future and allow God to work in and through us every day. There is peace in knowing that the journey is just as significant as the destination. And when we live in God's timing, we open ourselves to the abundant life He has promised us. Every day is an opportunity to experience the grace, peace, and love of God, no matter where we are on our journey. We may not always understand the timing, but we can trust that God is leading us. Sometimes the detours, the pauses, and the waiting periods are exactly what we need to prepare us for what's ahead. We can have peace in knowing that God's timing is never wrong, even when it doesn't align with our plans or expectations. Living in God's timing is a reminder to be present. In the now, to trust that God is guiding us step by step, and to surrender our need for control. It's about saying, "God, I trust you with today. I trust that you will show me the next step, and I know that you will lead me to where I'm supposed to be." It's not about rushing to the finish line, but about walking alongside God, trusting that His timing is perfectly orchestrated. Conclusion: trusting God's timing, expecting His miracles. As we reach the end of this journey of trusting in God's timing, I want to leave you with this thought. God is always at work in your life, even when you can't see it. The moments of waiting are not wasted. They are moments of preparation. When we trust that God is in control, we open ourselves up to seeing the miracles He has for us, even in the waiting. His timing is perfect, and His ways are far beyond our understanding. We may not always understand why things take longer than we expect, or why things seem to happen at unexpected moments, but that is where faith comes in. Faith is believing that, even in the waiting, God is working on our behalf. The struggles, the delays, and the moments of uncertainty are part of His process of refining us, shaping us, and preparing us for something greater. And in the end, when we look back, we will see that God's timing was worth every moment of waiting. Trusting God's timing means letting go of our need for control and surrendering to His will. It means choosing to believe that His plan is better than our own, and that His timing is perfect. Even when it doesn't make sense, every season of waiting, every moment of uncertainty is a chance for us to trust more deeply, to lean into God's promises, and to believe that He is with us every step of the way. So whatever you are waiting for today, I encourage you to let go of the anxiety, the fear, and the pressure to make things happen on your own. Trust in God's perfect timing, knowing that He is orchestrating every detail of your life for your good and His glory. The miracles you're waiting for are on their way, and God's timing will always be worth the wait. You don't have to figure it all out. God is in control. Trust His timing and watch as His perfect plan unfolds before you.